Minnesota took down USC, which was one of the many shocking upsets from this past Saturday. And as a result, the Trojans went tumbling out of the top 25. Currently, there would be number 26 if it extended further. So they're the first team out of the AP top 25. Meanwhile, Penn State has moved up to number 4 in the country, and they're the only team in the last 4 years to have 4 straight 5-0 season starts to their seasons. But can the Nittany Lions keep it going and get past the other team from Los Angeles as well? Or will USC bounce back and get a signature Big Ten win? Hello, everybody. You're listening to the College Sports Superfan. Today, we're going to be breaking down the matchup between the number 4 Penn State Nittany Lions and the USC Trojans, who are going to battle it out in the middle of the day on Saturday in the Coliseum. So, Penn State, if they can get past the Trojans, they'll then head into a bye week. And coming out of that bye week, the rest of the Nittany Lions schedule is very manageable. Keep in mind, they don't play Michigan this season, who they've had some struggles with recently, and they don't play Oregon either. The only other top-tier team in the Big Ten that they will play this season is currently the best team, which is Ohio State. But besides the Buckeyes, the rest of the schedule is very, very, very manageable and easy. So if they can get past USC, they've got a real good shot to go 11-1 this season. And hey, if they can upset the Buckeyes, that means potentially 12-0 and ending up in the top 4 and getting that first round bye in the college football playoff. However, I do have my concerns about Penn State. UCLA, in my opinion, is not a very good team. Before the season began, I was thinking the Bruins would be a team that could potentially go 2-10 or 3-9. I mean, this is a team that got gutted. They lost their head coach, Chip Kelly, who went to Ohio State to be their offensive coordinator. They had to promote a guy who I think is good, but he's got some work to do. They lost their defensive coordinator to arch rival USC, and D'Anton Lynn has done a great job with the Trojans, who we're about to talk about in just a second, funny enough. So they've got a lot of work to do, and still, Penn State showed some struggles against UCLA at home. They struggled to run the football, only 85 yards for 2.8 yards per carry. But in the first several games, in the first 4 games for the Nittany Lions, they actually ran the ball really well. So maybe this was just an off game, but concerningly, if they're not able to run the ball that well against USC's defense, then they could end up in some trouble in the Coliseum there. So, USC this season has been very good against the pass, but they have not been very good against the run, giving up 158.6 rushing yards per game. So that's why I'm saying if Penn State struggles to run the ball against USC, then that's going to show some serious concerns in the ground game. But I have the belief, because USC has struggled in that category, that Penn State will bounce back there. Let's talk about Penn State's actual roster, though. Quarterback Drew Aller has had his best season so far. Obviously, last year was just a freshman. This year, he's vastly improved on that season. He's got 1,101 yards with a 71% completion percentage, 9 touchdown passes, and an interception, plus 89 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns. So in total, he's got 12 total touchdowns with only 1 turnover. That's pretty good at this point in the season. And he's got some great running backs behind him as well. He's got Nicholas Singleton, who's got 408 yards, 7.7 yards per carry, with 3 rushing touchdowns, plus he has 74 yards receiving and 2 receiving touchdowns. So he's been a threat through the air and on the ground. And then his buddy Katron Allen there is 367 yards, which is 5 yards per carry on average, with 2 rushing touchdowns and a receiving touchdown. So Allen's production is not that huge of a drop-off from Singleton's production. At receiver, though, this has been more interesting for the Penn State offense. Aller has been solid. He's been spreading the ball around, but tight end Tyler Warren might just be the best tight end in the country. He's got 289 yards and 3 receiving touchdowns. Plus, he also has a rushing touchdown as well. So he has been really, really, really good. And then the other receivers, Harrison Wallace has 242 yards with 2 touchdowns. And Omari Evans has come out of nowhere to really be very good for this Penn State team. He's got 208 yards and 2 touchdowns. And on defense, this team has been very, very solid. Zane Durant has 12 tackles with 2.5 sacks in the middle of the defensive line. And then Abdul Carter has 22 tackles, 8 tackles for a loss, and 3 sacks. We all knew Abdul Carter was going to be a superstar before this season began. And then at linebacker, they've got a couple of great ones. Tony Rojas, who had a fantastic tackle in that UCLA game. He has 24 tackles and an interception this season. Kobe King has 23 tackles. So those 2 linebackers are really, really, really good. And then in the secondary, you've got a couple of great safeties. You have Jalen Reed, who has 34 tackles, and then he also had a sack in this UCLA game. Zakee Wheatley had 23 tackles and an interception. And then the other defensive backs, A.J. Harris had 16 tackles and an INT. But the corners overall have not been super, super strong for Penn State. So that is another slight concern for the Nittany Lions as they go up against this USC team, which we'll talk about them here in just a second, who has many, many weapons at wide receiver for quarterback Miller Moss. And just to say one last thing about Penn State, they have a very solid punter, but they've got a very erratic kicker, and they haven't done too many long field goals as a result. So that could be a bit of a concern for the Nittany Lions in a close game as well. But for USC, the Trojans got to experience true Big Ten football when they lost to Minnesota. The Golden Gophers pushed it into the end zone, made it 24-17 last weekend on the final push. That was true, blue collar, tough nosed football right there. And Minnesota actually scored another touchdown earlier in the game that was very similar to that final game-winning score. So USC got to experience that, but overall in the Big Ten, they haven't done too bad so far. They beat Wisconsin pretty good in the second half. They almost beat Michigan. It was very, very, very close on the road. So overall, the Trojans have not been too bad, but Penn State's certainly going to be a challenge. Miller Moss, he's been pretty solid with 64% completion, 1,398 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 4 INTs. He also has a rushing touchdown, but 2 lost fumbles. So overall, he's got 10 touchdowns and 6 turnovers. And I'm just going to be honest, his yardage isn't too bad, but I expected Miller Moss to be a little bit better than he's been so far this season. So it's been a slight disappointment, I'd say, up to this point, but he still has time to turn it around. He's got a lot of great weapons that can help him do that. Woody Marks has been a fantastic running back. He's been better than advertised with 468 yards, which is 5.8 yards per carry, with 4 touchdowns and only 1 fumble. And then Quentin Joyner has really moved up as the number 2 running back with 212 yards, which is 7.9 yards per carry, and 2 touchdowns with a fumble as well. So now they've got a legitimate 2-headed monster in their backfield also. And at wide receiver, again, Miller Moss has a lot of great receivers. I'll just go through the list here. Jacoby Lane is the main wide receiver with 234 yards and 4 touchdowns. Deuce Robinson has 147 yards and 3 touchdowns. Zachariah Branch has 227 yards, and Kyron Hudson has 226 yards. So overall, he's got a lot of different players that he can sling the ball out to. On defense, the USC defense, led by D'Anton Lynn at defensive coordinator, has gotten much, much, much better. Jamil Muhammad on the defensive line leads in tackles with 12, but overall the defensive line has been a slight disappointment. Bear Alexander, for example, has not gotten going as much as USC would have hoped he could have done this season. but the linebacker group is really, really, really good. That right there almost practically saves the front seven. Easton Mascarenhas Arnold has 36 tackles and an interception at linebacker. Mason Cobb has 25 tackles and 2 interceptions and a touchdown, so he's got a pick 6 on the year. Eric Gentry has 30 tackles and an interception. So those 3 linebackers are elite, especially the guy Easton EMA there. He's come out of nowhere, and he's been really, really, really good. At the defensive back, Jalen Smith has 18 tackles. Jacoby Covington has 17 tackles. At safety, Akili Arnold has 21 tackles, and Kamari Ramsey has 20 tackles. And another interesting thing about USC is they made a kicker change because Dennis Lynch was the kicker earlier in the year and last season, but he's been struggling, so they put in Michael Lance, and Lance has actually been pretty decent. USC also has a better punter than Penn State, so their special teams, especially with a guy like Zachariah Branch, who's electric with the football in his hands as a returner, their special teams is a bit better than Penn State special teams. So as a result of them hosting this game, with everything that's on the line, and the fact that they're still a great team, Penn State, the number 4 team in the country, is only favored by 5.5 points. So there's a real good chance that the Nittany Lions get upset here. Let's just go into some of the history of this series. They've actually played each other 10 previous times, and of course that includes a couple of bowl games as well. USC leads the all-time series 6-4, and they first met in 1923, which was a 14-3 USC victory. Penn State then won their next matchup, which was all the way in 1982 in the 1982 Fiesta Bowl. Penn State won 26-10. But USC has won the last 3 meetings, and the last 2 games were in the Rose Bowl. 2009, they won the Rose Bowl 38-24, and then 2017, one of the greatest Rose Bowls of all time, which is the most recent matchup between these two teams, USC won 52-49. That game was absolutely incredible. So those are their most recent meetings right there. My prediction here, after what I've witnessed this past weekend, I'm expecting more chaos. I'm expecting there to be more upsets coming around. So I feel like I've got a good feeling the Trojans are going to win this game at home by 3 and pull off a massive upset. To me, Penn State, I don't know what it is. They always go 10-2. I just don't know why. Their fans are going to hate me for saying this, but they always seem to go 10-2. And if I'm looking at the schedule, I'm saying, okay, well, Ohio State's probably going to be one of those 2 losses, but I can't see anywhere else where that second loss would be besides this USC game. So that's my logic there. I say they always go 10-2, so I'm going to say this is going to be their second loss. They're going to lose to the Trojans. And then maybe they can bounce back later and beat the Buckeyes. All right, thank you guys so much for listening and watching the College Sports Superfan. Stay tuned because I got more videos coming out this week. This is going to be a huge weekend for college football. Please like and subscribe for more.